Hey guys, this is Brian, and today I'm bringing you guys my Pendulum Magician deck profile for the 2018 August format. So a few of you guys in my other videos have been asking for a deck profile, so I'm happy to share mine. So yeah, I think my deck profile is pretty standard. It's not too much different from some of the lists that you've seen at the WCQs, because they've shown that this is playing a more sturdy deck and a more resilient deck that can play through a bunch of hand traps is much more powerful than something with a high ceiling at the moment. So my deck isn't playing any of the cards like the DDD engine to get a bunch of pluses or anything. It's just a simple game plan: make one or two Electromites, pendulum summon as many as I can with those resources, and then making a simple 3 or 4 negate board. So yeah, so let's just go straight into it. Let's just start with the main deck here. So to start off, we've got our standard 3 Harmonizing Magicians. So Harmonizing Magician is the best card in the deck because 1, it summons from the deck, so when you pendulum summon it, and 2, it's a tuner as well, so it gives you a lot of versatility in what you want to summon. A lot of the time you use this to make rank 4s or bring out the level 7 Magician that I play, the Janky Magician, to make your rank 7 plays. And it's just overall very versatile, just giving you the option of pretty much doing whatever you need to at the time. If you need to clear the boards, you can go into Ignista or Clearwing, or if you just simply want to, if you have an awful hand, you could just make it Omega and then rip a card out of their hand or something like that. So it's a very versatile card, and it's you really do need 3 copies of this in your deck. Next, I've got the next Magician. I think that is one of the better ones, is 3 Oath Dragon Magicians. So I saw this was played, it's usually played at 2, all the profiles from the WCQs have only played 2, and one of them played 3, but I think that his reasoning for this is very good. Now that Goki is a more relevant deck in the format, a lot of people are starting to play more cards such as Effect Veiler, Impermanence, and Ghost Ogre. So even though those hand traps are kind of bad against the other meta deck, which is Skystrike Trickster, it is very powerful against Goki. And those happens to be the hand traps that magicians have a hard time dealing with. So what Oath Dragon Magician, when you open this, you don't rely on adding back your Harmonizing Magician from Electromite. You can just use Oath Dragon instead. So when you open Oath Dragon, it's not the worst thing. It's one of the better ones just to get your pluses going. And you always want him in your scales at the end of your turn, just so then you can keep plussing. And your opponents have to deal with it, otherwise they're going to be dealing with you pendulum summoning Harmonizing Magician over and over again. So yeah, 3 Oath Dragon seems pretty good, but playing it at 2 is fine as well. Next, of course, the next best Magician as well, Wisdom Eye Magician. So Wisdom Eye Magician, very versatile, changes your scales, lets you activate Chronograph if you have it in your hand. So yeah, overall really good. It does conflict with Pendulum Call, which I also do play, but it does give you more options. So I feel like this is a good card to have in the deck. And yeah, this is also pretty standard. Now, I've had conflicting opinions on this next part here. A lot of different players have different ratios on this. I've seen different ratios of Black Fang Magician and Purple Poison, so I play 2 and 2. My reasoning for this here is, even though that they don't advance your game state, I feel that Pendulum Magicians are just very good in going first and going second. When you're going second, you can break boards quite easily, and you can OTK with these 2 cards. They push for damage. Of course, Purple Poison Magician you use to break boards, and there's a lot of cool combos you can do with Black Fang that lets you revive cards from the graveyard. So I feel like 2 and 2 are pretty good. They don't brick too often, but at the same time you don't really want to open them in your hand because you can't Turbo Electromite out, or they don't really do anything on summon either. So a bit iffy on these ratios, but I felt 2 and 2 was sufficient. I also play Desires, and I never liked banishing all of these because these are also, another relevant thing is that they're dark, and you play Clearwing to Raigeki your opponent's board, and if you banish both of these, then you can't Clearwing. So yeah, I felt like playing 2 can also alleviate, accidentally banishing it off Desires, and you rarely banish all of them off Desires when you're playing this ratio anyway. So that's my reasoning for that. The last 2 Magicians, level 7 and the level 3 Time Gazer. Time Gazer you need for Chronograph Sorcerers, nothing much to say about it. And it's not too much of a brick either compared to I think a Stargazer, the one you play with Astrograph when that was still legal, because at least it's a level 3, and you can just normal summon it and to make Electromite. The only thing that kind of sucks about this is that you have to be careful when you scale it, because you can't have any monsters if you want to scale it, and its scale becomes 0 if you're not careful. So I've seen some people who scale this and then scale Master Cerberus, and you got 2 4s in your scale, you can't do anything. As for the Janky Magician, it's okay. It's really good because it's level 7 to make your Vortex play. At the same time, it's a light negate, so if you don't need or you can't make the rank 7 Vortex, you can leave this on the board. It's a 2/5 body with a really good effect. It negates cards like Candina, it negates Firewall Dragon if people aren't careful, and people forget this a lot. It's also a quick effect, so it's really good. So yes, it's not even a Garnet because it's also a low scale. So yeah, it's not an awkward scale number. Alright, so that's the Magician lineup. I'm not sure how many I play. I think it's like 15 or something like that. But yeah, it's pretty big. Next cards are the Turbo cards to get Electromite on the field before summoning. Is 3 Chronograph Sorcerer, amazing card. Summons when you destroy a card, so you can make more Electromites or you can push for damage. Yeah, but I tend not to use this or send it to the extra deck with Electromite because usually only 1 Electromite's enough for me. Don't really need any more than that. But yeah, playing 3 of this is awesome. Next we've played the next turbo cards, which is the Mythical Beast engine. So we play 3 Cerberus and 2 Jackal. Pretty standard. Jackal's an amazing negate. You scale or play a spell and then you have 1 monster negate. Cerberus, it's a bit of a brick if you open too many of them, but you can summon it using Chronograph, and you have a monster removal, and it's a giant beat stick. You banish the biggest monster, and then it gains so much attack, and you just have like a 5,000, 6,000 attack beat stick, and it's just crazy. Next, got 3 Curtain Raisers, pretty good. You don't want to open multiple of these because they don't do anything, but it's basically like a Cyber Dragon for this deck. You just summon it for free if it's the only monster, if you control no monsters and you scale it. By itself, it's a 2,200 attack monster if it's the only monster in your field, so it's a natural out to Natura Beast, which is more relevant now that Burning Abyss is a deck. They play Rescue Cat and they turbo out Natura Beast, so just by summoning this you can beat over it and crash. It outs annoying cards like Thunder King Ryo, Inspect the Border. Yeah, it just outs a bunch of stun cards, so it's really good. As well as the fact that it turbos out Electromite, so you have to play that. There are some lists that played it at 2. I think that's fine as well, because you don't want to see multiples of it, but I think it's up to personal preference if you want to play 2 or 3 of them. The last set of monsters, I believe, in my deck is the Supreme King engine. Awesome. You always want to have Supreme King Dragon in the grave, so if you ever make XYZs, you always want to send Supreme King Dragon. It's a +1 if you send it to the grave. You play it with Pendulum Call, and then you pretty much win the game because you get so much advantage off a single Pendulum Call. And yeah, it's just an overall really good card. You get so many pluses off it, and if you have it in the grave, you always have like a backup place if your opponent destroys your board somehow. And the final one is a single Rescue Hamster. I've been jumping back and forth on this card a little bit, but it's really good in the grind game. If you open it early, it's a little bit awkward sometimes because you might not be able to resolve any of its effects, but generally speaking, the Rescue Hamster is pretty solid. It gives you more options in the mid to late game when you start need to grinding up against your opponent, when all your resources are in your extra deck. So Rescue Hamster can bring back a lot of the resources. So that's all my monsters. I believe I play either 30 or 31. I think it's 31. Next, the spell cards. Play 3 Pot of Desires. You play 3 of pretty much everything. And it's a +1. It's basically, you read this as a +1. It's basically a Pot of Greed for a Pendulum Magician deck because you play so many multiples. The only awkward cards that you might end up banishing may be like if you have Cerberuses and you banish your Jackals or something, or if you banished like your level 7 and you want to make a rank 7 play. Sometimes you get awkward banishes, but just the fact that it gives you a +1 is just insane, so you have to play it. I've seen some people who play it at 2, but I just like opening it, and as long as you're smart with when you use it, you can circumvent the accidental banishes. But generally speaking, I like to open my turn with just playing Pot of Desires because Drawn Lockbird is pretty relevant right now. So a lot of the other cards, they make you either +0, or they just neg 1. So Pot of Desires, if you do it first, it's a +1, so you get the maximum amount of draws before you get drawed. And you can play through everything else through draw anyway, so Pot of Desires is really good for baiting out those kinds of cards. And you don't really lose much out on them using draw, because then they start their turn with only 5 cards after they draw. And you have a full board, so it's pretty good. You don't get hurt by draw too much. Another card that's basically Pot of Desires is 2 Pendulum Call. Amazing, brings back the scales that brings the scales to your hand that you need. Get Harmonizing to your hand like you need, because the whole deck revolves around Harmonizing Magician. So a way to get it is awesome. So yeah, Pendulum Call. You search usually 2 of the scale 8s, and then you get the Oath Dragon through other means. So that's really good. It also stops your scales from being destroyed. So when you have things like Black Fang and Purple Poison in the scale, you can still use their effects even though they are required to be destroyed, because destruction is not a requirement for the card to activate. So it protects it. So you not only do you get the benefits of reducing the attack or gaining the attack, it doesn't destroy either. So you can really push for damage and keep your scales with this card. So it has some pretty neat interactions with the Magicians. And the last 3 cards, I'm basically playing 3 Foolish Burials. This is all entirely for the Supreme King Darkworm. That's why I play 2 Dragon Shrine. Sometimes you get an awkward hand, you open 2 of them, but it's such a good card you can't not play it. And Foolish Burial, it's versatile as well, because you don't have to always send the Darkworm. Sometimes you open hands with a Dragon Shrine and a Foolish Burial. You can send Darkworm off this, and Foolish Burial you can send a Dark Spellcaster, so you could potentially combo off with Black Fang if you open a Black Fang. So yeah, it's got some nice uses there. So yeah, so that's my main deck. I believe it's 40 cards, no more or less. You want to play a consistent deck, so pretty much you want to keep it at 40. I considered playing Upstart Goblin, but I couldn't really decide on what I wanted to cut. Maybe a Pot of Desires, but I felt like Pot of Desires is just so good, and I do want to cut it. Anyway, let's move on to the extra deck. We've got 3 Electromites, of course. Electromite is basically Lavabo Chain, but better. For Pendulums, this is a busted card. You basically can manipulate your hand however you want. You can get whatever scale you need, card you need. It gives you a draw. I mean, what else can you ask for? It's just everything that Pendulums need or ever want. Now that it's in Master Rule 4, you can't Pendulum Summon as easily anymore, but Electromite lets you control your hand and your field and everything you need to manipulate going around zones, and you can basically win the game if you can get Electromite with a good Pendulum Summon. So I tend to only summon 1 and get my Harmonizing Magician into my hand, and then from there you have so many options already. So yeah, Electromite you have to play 3. There's some lists that play 2, but now that the format, if you don't play against Goki, the format is very control based. If you don't immediately lose to a U-Link or an extra link or something like that, the games might come into the state when you need 3 of them. And the fact that the Pendulum Magicians are so recursive, playing 3 is really good. You will always miss the 3rd one if you go into a long game, so you have to play 3. Next, Link 2, I play 1 Wii, which is Apprentice. This is the new one from Cybernetic Horizon. It's an option when they cherries your Electromite. Now that Pendulum's picking up a bit of steam, people might start playing cherries on the Electromite. So this is another card you can go into to get some more zones. Originally we were playing Underclock Taker, because it's an OTK tool, but this is also kind of like an OTK tool, because it gives all your dark monsters 500 attacks, so you can hit over... Your monsters hit really hard when you have this on the field, so I think you can pick and choose what you want. So this is pretty good, but I feel Underclock Taker is also just as good, but I chose this because it has 2 link zones, link arrows, as opposed to 1 that Underclock has. This is the last link that I play. I play Zephyr Metatron. It's pretty standard, but because you want to link your Electromite and your Absolute Dragon away for something to get your Vortex out, so this is the one that I usually use. Other than that, I didn't play any other link monsters because I did feel like I needed. Borrowload Dragon was an option, and so was Firewall, but because my deck doesn't play many turbo cards, Firewall Dragon never actually came up. Instead of Borrowload Dragon, I went for something that was a little bit less resource intensive, which was Ignister. It does basically the same thing. Next we got some rank 4s. Abyss Dweller, probably the best rank 4 in the deck and even the format right now. It just shuts down. If you go first and you don't know what you're playing against, you make an Abyss Dweller and half the time you'll just immediately win the game. This card wins immediately against Goki, it wins against annoying decks like True Draco as well. Just a brilliant card. Next is you're out to annoying floodgates, which include things like anti-spell fragrance and what else? I'm trying to think, like rivalries, stuff like that. If you get this on turn 1 and you know your opponent doesn't rely on the graveyard, this is a good way to shut down like those kinds of decks. It's really good against decks like Skystrike variants because they set a lot of cards, so you can just pop them. It forces out Scapegoat if you make it as well, which is pretty neat. Next is the Skystrike Counter, Khan Gorgon. So Khan Gorgon, what it does is that it deflects any targeting card. So it beats Skystriker because they try to like afterburner your main monster to bait out the negate. You can just say nope, I'm gonna redirect it. Or if they use something like Widow Anchor, you can redirect it, and it's not once per turn. And you can chain it inside the same chain. So if they Widow Anchor and then chain Widow Anchor to the effect, you can switch both the targets. So it's bloody amazing. And the last rank 4, I saw this was played at the, I think it was the American WCQ, the guy who came top 16, which is a Performage Trapeze Magician. So not many lists played this, but I was testing this and I liked it a lot because not only does it let you, it's the only rank 4 that I found that could push for damage because it allows you to attack twice in the battle phase with a monster. So if you have like a big monster like Cerberus on the field and you can let it attack twice, it's just insane damage. It also gives you the protection from burn damage, so if you don't want to take too much damage from like Lycoris or something like that, you can go into this. But this was mostly used as an OTK material than anything else, and it came up a lot when I was testing on this, just because it gave more options. Because sometimes you don't need things like Omega, or you don't need an Ignista, you just need to push for damage and keep the game simple, so you can make this and then just hit over everything. Just keep in mind that this does not target itself, so I found that the hard way, and I lost the game when I was off by 300 life points for lethal. Next we play Naruto, your standard rank 6 for negates. I go into this sometimes because sometimes people forget about the card. You pendulum summon 2 of them, you say, is that okay? They say yes, you make it, and then they forget they can't activate Scapegoat and underneath this, so they kind of lose. So yeah, best rank 6 we can play. It's also got a big body as well, so good options. Next we play the Odd Eyes package. Absolute is, I rarely use Absolute's effect during the battle phase. I find myself going straight into Vortex Dragon, but Absolute is kind of good because if you want to hit for damage, you hit it for damage first and then you tag it out for the Vortex because Vortex is slightly weaker. So you got some efficiency plays with that. But yeah, this is pretty standard for negates in this deck. And lastly, we play 3 Synchro. We play 1 Ignista, 1 Omega, and 1 Supreme King Dragon Clearwing. Now, easily the best card here is the Clearwing. The fact that it Raigekis your opponent's boards, and then people don't like respect that sometimes because Raigeki isn't really played in the current format. But just having a very versatile way to get into a Raigeki for free, and you get to kill with like a 2,500 beat stick, it's just incredible. People make a crazy board and it doesn't matter, you just Raigeki and then the game's pretty much over. If you force out Scapegoats early, this just like obliterates all the tokens so they can't do anything about it. Omega, this is the one I kind of tossed a bit. I'm not really sure about how I feel about this. This originally was played so then I didn't want to go into rank 4s all the time, otherwise my Harmonizing would be in the graveyard. Sometimes you want your Harmonizing in your extra deck, so you can add it back with Oath Magician for the next game. So you make Omega, and you don't waste the utility of Ignista and Clearwing, because if you summon, if you want to Harmonizing back for in turn 1 and you had kind of awkward hand, you can't really make Clearwing because it doesn't really make sense. You could make, I guess, another Electromite, but I felt like Omega, just being able to rip a card out of your opponent's hands, I'm like, oh, this is awesome. And then Ignista, this was my choice of non-targeting, non-destruction removal. People played like Borrowload instead of Ignista. I just like Ignista because it's a bit easier to summon. It doesn't require Link 4 materials to make. And it destroys your scales too, which can let you combo. So it's pretty neat. That's just my preference. So yeah, that's my deck. So yeah, that's all there is to my deck profile. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Just want to do a quick honorable mention to the DDD engine, which includes 3 Kepler, Thomas, 2 gates, contact gates, and the Leonidas. I think that engine is awesome. It adds a lot of pluses, but I just personally don't like it because it plays into a lot of hand traps. I don't like getting jolt trying to use that engine. It kind of shuts it off, and if you draw multiples of it, it can make some awkward hands. But it does allow you to play like you have so much more players. You can go into a firewall and multiple electromites way easier. So it has some value there. I just personally don't use it. But yeah, so my game plan is just try to get a single electromite out with the Vortex, a Jackal, and a rank 4 or something like that. Just keep it simple. I don't play a high ceiling style, so just a resilient deck that can play through hand traps and can make a good board. So yeah, that's my deck. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you want to see more videos like this, feel free to give it a like, subscribe if you want to see more content. I'm planning on making more video combos soon. I've been playing a lot of Spiral and World Chalice and those kinds of combo decks, so I might make a few videos on those. But other than that, I'll see you guys next time.